because in search marketing, it's a dynamic bidding marketplace. You might bid 10 cents for a keyword, you might bid $1.50 for every click. And if you only convert a couple percent of the people who click, you pay on every click 10 cents, 50 cents. You really have to be scientific, because otherwise, the money goes very quickly. So understanding your variable costs and understanding the right look-back window. We tend to look, there's a lot of debate, we tend to give consumers 45 days. If you come and you search for Boston hotels, and you click on Travelocity's Boston Hotels link, we will watch for 45 days whether you come back to our site and purchase. And if you do, we will attribute that 50 cents we paid, we will attribute the sale to that 50-cent click. But it's a lot of debate, because you might have come back to Travelocity anyway. How incremental is that spend? And we've done a lot of research lately, and we actually think that up to a quarter of the people who come through search marketing would have come anyway, because we're a well-known brand and people shop around. So as you think about how much to spend on any given keyword, if you're scientific about it, you want to understand your variable profit, and you want to understand the incrementality of the customer acquisition. In online marketing, it's absolutely essential, though, that you do usability testing. I mean, that's sort of the very first step. And there's obviously third-party research and Forrester and all these great secondary sources, but there's nothing that beats getting 7 people in a room in the Jacob Nielsen information architecture style, the great founder of information architecture and usability. And with just 7 people, one at a time for an hour each, if you test an interface for an online shopping site, you're going to discover 95% of the problems with it and where people will get confused. And that's very powerful. We've used usability analysis to radically improve our site. We, for instance, discovered that people forget their passwords. This isn't rocket science, but it's something that we kept hearing. We devised a way for people to purchase, even our members, without having to remember their password. They just had to re-enter their credit card number, and we would identify them from their address and their email address and connect it to their profile. But they didn't have to remember their password. And overnight, sales went up 10%, which for us is worth tens of millions of dollars of revenue. And it was simply because people at that late stage in the checkout process online, they've done their research. They want to give you their money and buy their trip. And if you make it hard, they'll go somewhere else. We test the usability of the site, we test the messages, we test the usability of features, we test what people want, we read all the secondary research. We do all sorts of research, but ultimately there are moments where you're really going to have to use your gut and your intuition as a marketer when you're talking about something very different. Behavior information is particularly powerful. We've created in our email list something called a universal control group. So we set aside a group of our customers that receive no communications, and they're our control universe, because you don't want to test how many times someone who gets an email buys. They might have bought anyway without the email. You need a control group. And we'll test different kinds of emails and different kinds of price points and messages. And it turns out you can very quickly see where the incremental lift is. Relevance marketing is where the biggest lift happens. Compared to our normal emails, if you can personalize a great deal to a consumer that they've been looking for recently in their shopping behavior, it can be 8 to 9 times more incremental business than a standard unpersonalized email communication. And that's very lucrative.
Dear Bill, it's nice to plan a trip just the way you like it. I enjoy making new friends. That's me on the left. I kept telling him, it's just a knock-knock joke, you big silly. Oh my word, moving on swiftly. I kept looking. When she promised to write, I should have known. Yours very fondly, the roaming gnome.
I certainly had a lot of skeptics around the industry and around the company even asking me, why would we spend $80 million on a concrete lawn ornament? And I can understand their concern at first, but now, 2 years into the launch, we don't get those questions anymore. The Gnome won Best Retail Advertising Campaign, online or offline, from the American Marketing Association this year, the Gold Effie Award. And with 37% growth, we know that he's speaking to the traveling public. The objective always was to humanize the brand and give it a personality the way the Geico Gecko or the Pillsbury Doughboy give personality to those companies. And his traits of being funny and human and scrappy, but he's also a funny voice to communicate in a skeptical world about our benefits. He can talk about the guarantee. He can talk about saving maximum moolah so there's more money for the menu bar in a way that's funny and that people will pay attention to in a world where consumers are bombarded by thousands of ads and they're cynical. And lastly, he's the embodiment of our spirit of the joy of travel and great travel experiences done right, because he's the ultimate symbol of getting out of the garden and exploring the world with fresh eyes, and that's the spirit that we want people, our members, to take. 6 or 7 of the most important moments of their lives will come when traveling. And so our goal is to get people out of their daily routine and explore fresh places and not just be a traveler in a tourist sense, but be a great traveler and have memorable water cooler stories when they get home. So that's what the gnome allows us to communicate.